we'll have done, 850,000 calves by the end of the year. Even in the spring peak there's up to 100,000 calves a week for a couple of weeks in the spring there in February, and it's still held very, very, 98% plus of those samples came back within that 4-day time period.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and this week I'm joined by Mark Waters from the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation, ICBF, to discuss the National Genotyping Programme, which has recently opened for applications. Mark, you're very welcome. Some farmers listening will have previously joined the programme when it opened back in 2023. What is the National Genotyping Programme?
The National Genotyping Programme is a world-leading collaborative project aimed at genotyping the entire national bovine herd in Ireland. So in the first year, we took in about 10,500 herds, and again another 4,500 herds last year, and now we have it open again for a third year to take in new herds. So we've about 1,700 or so now. New herds again have joined in 2025, have joined the programme.
That's great numbers, Mark. I suppose, what's the benefits for farmers, particularly beef farmers, for joining, and especially maybe those that are in SCEP?
Yeah, so it's very complementary to SCEP. It was designed to work hand in hand with that program. I suppose one important thing to note, I suppose there's a lot of schemes out there between, beef welfare, weighing and meal feeding and SCEP and different ones. So it is easy to get mixed up. NGP is a separate program to SCEP, but the two do complement each other very well. So for SCEP herds in particularly, the big advantage is to be able to genotype their calves at birth. So what happens when herds join the program, Catherine, is that any ungenotyped cows, heifers, heifer calves that are in the herd that will be going for breeding, they'll be genotyped free of charge, and then the herd genotypes all their calves at birth, and those samples then count towards their SCEP samples. So, SCEP herds have to genotype 70% of their reference number each year. So the samples they're taken from the calves at birth for the NGP count towards their SCEP requirements, which is a huge labour saving. They're not waiting until later in the year till maybe cows and calves have gone back to grass and getting in, hardy weanlings, trying to round them up and take genotype samples from them. So that's one of them. That's probably the main benefit. Those calves then are cost roughly €6 a piece, but for those samples that are counted for your SCEP requirements, they effectively won't cost you anything. You'll get the €6 back at the end. So the only real cost is those handful of calves you might have, above and beyond your SCEP genotyping requirement.
That's great, Mark. And I suppose for herds that are involved and for herds that are going to join, what's involved for those herds?
If they do have some cows or heifers left in the herd that haven't already been genotyped, over the next few weeks, we'll be sending them out button tags to genotype those animals. As I said, that's free of charge, other than just their own work of getting them in and sampling them. And then after that, then really all there is involved is just sending away the second sample at birth. So herds in the NGP have exclusive access to what are called double tissue calf tags. So what that means is the second tag that you're already putting in the calves' ears leaves a sample, which means there's no extra button tag or extra hair card sample to be taken to get your genotype. Now they have to go to a separate lab. Unfortunately, we can't test both the BVD and the DNA in the same lab. So that's really all there is extra to your normal calving your normal calving routine. Let's say you have your second sample to send away in a separate envelope, and that's it. You submit your samples and register your calves online as you would normally. So yeah, that's the only other real requirement is you have to be able to submit your calf registrations online, whether that's a farm software or through Ag Food or through a third party. There are third parties out there that will submit the records online for you, but the normal paper registrations aren't compatible. But other than that, it's the same routine as you have in your normal spring calving. There's no targets or star ratings you have to meet or anything like that, like there is, say, with the SCEP, for example.
And in relation to registering the calf, how long will it take to register the calf when you're in the programme?
It will take a couple of days longer to get your blue card or your passport for your calf back, because one of the main benefits of the program is that we check the parentage and the sex that you put down in case you've made an error, and it's automatically updated if you have made an error. So we wait for the result of the sample to come back to do that, but the lab typically gets that back to us in 4 days. So you're talking 4 or 5 days extra before your blue card is issued on average. And look, at that average held very, very well all of last year. Even when we'll have done 850,000 calves by the end of the year. Even in the spring peak there's up to 100,000 calves a week for a couple of weeks in the spring there in February, and it still held very, very 98% plus of those samples came back within that 4 day time period. So you get all the information back well within the time frame that most suckler farms would be looking to sell any calves or need their passports back.
That's great, Mark. And I suppose once the calf is registered and they have the genotype samples sent, when will the calf have a genomic evaluation?
That happens very quickly as well. So once the calf is registered, then we have weekly evaluations for newly genotyped animals, and they go into that basically, unless there's some other issue. But again, the vast majority, there's no problem. So they go into that weekly evaluation. So it just depends on what day of the week they register, then whether to make that week's weekly or the following week. So you're talking a week to 2 weeks from when the calf is fully registered. Then you get a full genomic evaluation, which your genomic stars. Your CBV value will also show on the mart if you're selling your weanings in the mart, and also then you'll know the eligibility of the calf. They say heifer calves for keeping, or pedigree bulls if you're selling pedigree bulls for breeding. So again, it's a very good program for pedigree herds, because they have genotyping now is a requirement for a lot of animals in pedigree societies or for pedigree sales and so on. So you're getting all of those jobs done at the same time as you're tagging the calf, which you have to do anyway. So you're killing multiple birds there with the one stone.
Most definitely, Mark. Just to confirm, the BVD samples and these DNA samples, they're sent to 2 different locations. How do the farmers know which is sent where based on the tags?
Yeah, so like I said, unfortunately, we can't do. It'd be lovely if we could do them all into one place, but they do have to go separately. So with the National Genotyping Programme, with the double tissue tags, there are addressed envelopes included in the box with your tags from your tag supplier, and they're pink, very bright pink in colour. And then the samples then are also colour coded. So the sample that goes for the DNA is also a kind of a pink colour on the bottle or on the cap of the bottle. So we've tried to do that as much as we can to keep it consistent. So the pink is the DNA, and you'll have the envelopes. All you'll have to do is add your stamp, your postage to that envelope, and your BVD. Then you continue to use whichever of the approved laboratories that you wish. As you've always done. So yeah, that's how you tell the difference. Pink equals DNA is kind of the simplest way to remember.
Is it possible then to track the samples from once they're taken on the farm until the farmer gets the result?
Like, okay, to track in the post, obviously you'd have to do a registered post, which is more expensive, but certainly you can track them with ICBF once they reach the lab. So on the Herd Plus app, which all of the NGP herds would have access to the data on, there's a genotype tracking facility, and they can see exactly when it hits the lab. And we also even give estimated dates for when we expect the result to be there, so they know then, okay, well, it's in train, and I should have a result back in 2 days or so. And they can also see immediately then, if there is an empty, which unfortunately there is always a small percentage of maybe empties or unsuitable samples, they can see that there as well. So in the case, if there is for any reason a delay or we can't get a result from a sample, we release the passport, so as to allow the farmer then to move on and sell the calf if he wishes. And it's up to the farmer then if he wants to circle back and take a second sample or wait a bit bit longer for the result if, say, the sample was delayed. But that only happens, like I said, that happens in, less than 2% of cases.
And I suppose for farmers that are interested, how can they join the programme?
As with previous years, you can join through your ICBF login. The same login that you would go into view stars or view your SCEP requirements, register your scales for the weighing programs, any of that kind of stuff. There's a big green button on the home page. You can't miss it. Otherwise, then we also have posted out to pretty much every herd a letter around the NGP explaining the program, and that includes a sign-up form and a return envelope. So you can send back the sign-up form either. Look at if you'd like the form and you haven't got one or you've mislaid it, just give us a call and we'll send you another one. No problem. So look, I mentioned there's a €6 per calf. You do pay the €6 up front for all the calves, and as I mentioned, you get the 6 back effectively in your SCEP payment for any that are sent in or counted for SCEP. So €4 of that is direct debit to cover the lab cost. So the form has bank details on it there, so you will need your bank details for the direct debit element. But other than that, it's just a simple one-page form is all you have to fill up and send back to us.
That's great, Mark. And for farmers that are interested in looking for further information on what we've discussed here, where can they find more details?
Yeah, so there's loads of information on the ICBF website, in the letters that we've sent to people. But absolutely, we're more than happy for people to give us a call. So they can either email us on at query@icbf.com, or they can call us on 023 8820 452. Generally speaking, if we get the time to actually chat to somebody one-to-one on the phone, it's a great opportunity to explain it, and most farmers come away fairly positive about the program. So we'll only be delighted if people ring us in and ask us, because it gives us the best chance of explaining the program as well as we can.
That's great. Thanks very much. And I'll include the details in the podcast text. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Catherine.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Mark for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.